Hi, my name is Reed Silverne. Name of the show is Fed Pride. Reason it's called Fed Pride is because I'm a federal worker and proud of it. Today, as you see, although I'm not sure that it's that clear, you have the 25 freeway behind me, and this is on the website Zillow, which is really a real estate website, but it also has satellite pictures and comes up with a really nice satellite picture. And what you see over here, if I can get the cursor on the screen, is Colorado Springs. And the reason I have Colorado Springs on the background today is because our wonderful tabloid news, and of course I would never contribute to tabloid news on this show, although I've done it before and I'm doing it right now. The head of the evangelical organization in America is a guy named Ted Haggard, Reverend Ted Haggard. And the Reverend Ted Haggard just kind of got himself into a gigantic mess. And what this mess was is apparently a gay prostitute got on a talk show and accused him of hiring his services. I'll try to keep it as nice as I can. And this is the head of a 14,000 member megachurch in, of all places, beautiful Colorado Springs. Colorado Springs is also the home of the Focus on the Family, one of the biggest lobbies for the Christian right. And it's also the home of the Air Force Academy, which of course is a really good thing anyway. So, and which I support 1,000%. And don't get me wrong, I like evangelicals, I like the evangelical church. However, this is getting to be a big tabloid story, and it does have its kind of almost comical aspect to it, in that any story where somebody who is extremely pious is exposed as being hypocritical always attracts attention. The fact that it's 4 days before the election, by the way, as I always try to say, this is live to tape, not live to live. So you're seeing something taped on Friday, October 3rd, and this story broke yesterday, and I was amazed by it. Although I had kind of vaguely heard of Ted Haggard, he's not one of the real famous guys. He's not one of the big TV guys. He's not like Dobson and Focus of the Family, who gets on TV a lot. Or Jerry Falwell, who used to get on TV a lot, especially back in the Reagan days. He's more of a quiet guy, but he's very, very powerful. He's head of the National Association of Evangelicals, and ironically, he's not as radical, I guess you might say. He's a supporter of Bush. He's a Republican, but he also is worried about global warming. He's worried about poverty and things like that. And he's not, off the board the way some people are, but he's got on record as being completely against homosexuality in every way, and especially against homosexual marriage. And he and Dobson are two of the big supporters of these gay marriage amendments that are going on those states that have propositions, which are really amendments to the constitutions of those states. And the Republicans really like these amendments because they mobilize the conservative vote, especially on off-year elections like this. So, however, a lot of these states have already passed anti-gay marriage amendments. So a lot of these are going against not just gay marriage, but against domestic partnership. Now, I've gone on this show and stuck my foot up my throat and actually talked about gay marriage amendments and so on and so forth. And I will repeat what I think. I believe, this is from just my background, that marriage is a semantic thing. Has a definition of marriage of men and women, however, it's also a legal thing that grants a whole bunch of rights. Rights of legitimacy of the children, in community property states, right to share property, right to have control over the fate of a spouse who may be dying or may be in a hospital or is infirm somehow or other, right to inherit. There's all kinds of rights that married couples have, or the other one spouse has, compared to the other spouse. Also, the right to receive medical care under the spouse's insurance, a whole bunch of things like that. And there are what they call domestic partnership laws in many states, not in all, that cover almost all of these rights. So and I'm for those. I'm for domestic partnership. So once there's domestic partnership is in place and they have these rights, then I believe that this whole gay marriage thing is really a semantic hair split. And what good is it? Why not just leave the word marriage in its traditional sense? It has a religious connotation, has a definitional connotation, and then allow domestic partnership to grant all those legal rights that couples are denied, or gay couples, or even couples that are in common law marriage or cohabiting, which means they're living together, so that they have these rights as well. I've known couples, regular heterosexual couples. The husband was called up to go to war, and or not the husband, but the male, or one of the spouses was called up to go to war, and they had to get married right before he left, so that if he was wounded, she could take care of him, and she could visit him, and she could participate in the health insurance and all the benefits of being the spouse of somebody on active duty military. So there's no doubt about it. There are these things. And I think that that kind of thing, although not militarily, because we have don't ask, don't tell, should be granted, at least as far as work is concerned, insurance, right to have inheritance, all these different rights in domestic partnership. No reason to call it marriage, in my opinion. And that's just my opinion. That is worth exactly what every other opinion is worth, and that is absolutely nothing. So what is this whole situation? The situation is really kind of sad. Not only did this guy apparently, or at least he's accused of meeting with this guy once a month, buying services from a person who admits that he's a gay prostitute, but also he's accused of buying methamphetamines, which is outrightly illegal. Now, why would a preacher, a reverend in a major mega church, obviously well respected in his community, want to mess around with methamphetamine? It's completely beyond my thinking. And what's more is he kind of semi-denied what this fellow was accusing him of. The guy who's the accuser is named Mike Jones, 49 years old, Denver man, and Ted Haggard presented himself as being Art. That was the name that he used, and apparently this fellow Mike Jones has phone messages of Art asking him to buy drugs for him, or saying, "Oh, I'm in town, I have $100," and things like that. So the whole thing is pretty grim, and it's being treated as a big tabloid story. And of course, for the Republicans, since this guy has come out, he is a friend of Bush's, he is a very strong Republican, and very, very strong conservative, and also very, very close to Dobson, who's the head of Focus on the Family and a real ally of Dobson's. It's very, very embarrassing, and it's a little element of hypocrisy. However, it might not be hypocrisy at all. It might be an element of sin and redemption. And I checked out the New Life Church. That's Ted Haggard's church that he founded. Actually founded it in his basement and built it up into a mega church. They were building a mega church right next to the Air Force Academy. And of course, in the course of his career as a megachurch pastor. He ended up becoming head of the National Association of Evangelicals with 30 million members. It's really churches that are members, and those churches have 30 million members. So I don't know if he has a mailing list of 30 million people, but he might. They, however, said that he has resigned today, and that his successor, who's a guy named Senior Pastor Reverend Ross Parsley, serve as acting senior pastor of the church. And Reverend Parsley requested his community's compassion for the Haggard family and the New Life Church, but he also said that he had admitted to some of the charges, he being Ted Haggard. Ted Haggard has 5 kids, so that kind of makes it even worse. Not only is he married, but he has 5 children, from 22 down to 11, so there's still some kids out there, and I feel sorry for them because, I mean, who cares about my show? But he's all over all the tab shows, MSNBC, Fox, Rita Cosby, Nancy Grace, you name it. And his name is being thrown around. And he has a 22-year-old girl, 20-year-old boy, but he also has, who's a pastor, but he also has younger children, including 3 boys, 17, 14, and 11, who I'm sure don't need to be exposed to his father's secret sins. But there's nothing that they can do about it. They will. So what does this really mean? Well, I think in terms of everything, it doesn't mean very much. There is an election for Congress going on. The last big flap was Senator Kerry, who's not running for anything, who's a Democrat, kind of putting his foot in his mouth and implying that people can either be smart and go to college or end up in Iraq. He claims that that's not what it meant, but all the Republican talk shows, all the conservative talk show hosts, Hannity and Limbaugh and Larry Elder and all those have just been going wild about it for a couple days, and now this kind of distracted everybody from the previous tabloid story, which is Mark Foley. Mark Foley is a Republican congressman who turned out to have been a pedophile who was busy sending suggestive emails to young pages who were 15, 16, and 17 years old, although they never really came out with an accusation that he actually had sex with anybody under 18. He certainly was asking them what they look like naked and all that good stuff. So, you know, here is this kind of hypocritical, very, very conservative congressman getting exposed as not only gay, but a pedophile on top of it, and then being distracted with this story that was welcomed by the right-wing talk shows. Now all the tabloids are on this head of the National Association of Evangelicals for a very, very similar thing, although the guy that he was involved in was 49 years old, consenting adults, but even worse, involving drugs. And actually some evidence that he may have actually bought drugs, which is outrightly illegal. So I have a feeling that he's going to check himself into rehab pretty soon as well. So where does this come from, and what does it mean? And I'm going to start, you know, just get on my soapbox for a couple minutes. I am personally a Republican, and I consider myself a moderate, but I really do believe that it's difficult and it's not good for American democracy to have united government. Our founding fathers set up the government so that the Congress would check the executive, which is the presidency, and that the Supreme Court, which is not just the Supreme Court, but the federal court system, would interpret the laws that Congress makes within the framework of the Constitution and with the Bill of Rights in order to protect all three. So there's checks and balances throughout the whole system. Plus there's state governments with certain rights, the people with certain rights, the federal government with other rights, all checking and balancing each other. And here we have a situation where for the second time in recent times, we have a presidency, a House of Representatives, and a Senate all in the same party. And I think that that has led, if not to abuse, then the ability to really, really screw and mess everything up. And I think that's exactly what happened. Last time we had all three, Senate, House, and presidency in the same party, was the first 2 years of Clinton's administration. The result was the Democrats got swept out of the Congress, both the House and the Senate, with the contract with America, and Clinton ended up getting investigated constantly for the next 6 years, to the point where there was an impeachment against him. Now we're in a situation where we had 9/11, a situation that occurred where for the first 11 months of that presidency, up until, or 10 months of the presidency, I guess it's actually, because it's January to September, it's about 9. Nothing happened. In fact, the head of the counterterrorism group was demoted. And basically a very, very traditional thing of the next administration saying to the last administration, your priorities are out, my priorities are in. And the result was 9/11. So once 9/11 occurred, then we had a situation where we had all three, House, Senate, presidency, uniting together in order to fight terrorism, which is great. Handled the Afghanistan situation beautifully, but hubris occurred. What's hubris? Hubris is the pride that goes before a fall. And there is something in our system to prevent the pride that goes before a fall. And that is these checks and balances between the branches of government. And we had this whole situation that came up. I was in Europe at the time. I won't say what I was doing there, but I was working for the government. And I was in Europe when 9/11 happened. It took a couple of weeks, but security went up through the roof, which was great. I felt much more secure. All of a sudden, most of the security that I saw around me, not all, but most, was pulled off. And it was pulled off because troops were being prepared and sent from Afghanistan, from Europe, from wherever, and prepared to go into war against Saddam Hussein. And a whole big definition and explanation of why this was a world crisis was accepted by most governments and turned out to simply be not true. Now, there's no doubt about it, Congress was stampeded, and nobody in Congress, or very few people, were willing to look at it twice and look at this weapons of mass destruction argument twice, because they didn't want to be accused of being soft on terrorists. Terrorists had killed 3,000 Americans. However, ended up, Saddam's regime was not in bed, at least with Al-Qaeda. They're in bed with other terrorists, but not Al-Qaeda. And in fact, within the Islamic world were their enemies. And even more so, that they had been faking that they had a nuclear program. The nuclear program had actually been dismantled during the 10 years that the IAEA was in there trying to control it and dismantle it. However, he threw out the IAEA inspectors and was trying to pretend that he was powerful and strong. This was Saddam Hussein, which of course led to missteps on all sides. So would a Democratic Congress enforce, or at least one House, not being unified with the president, have done anything at that time? Probably not. Congress probably would have gotten along with it. And I have to admit, I was completely for the war, and I still am. I thought that Saddam Hussein was a homicidal maniac. But I even told my friends at the time, especially my German friends who were against it, that we should wait to take on Saddam until we've captured Osama bin Laden, until we've captured Zawahiri, until we've settled out and won the Afghan war, which I didn't feel we had at that point, until our people overseas, of course I was one of them, was secure. So that naturally didn't happen. So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is without checks and balances, you end up with everybody going the same way. And the House, the Senate, the talk shows, Fox News Network, the president, a lot of the media, basically the people united, as they should be in a time of war, all going in the same direction. And it's hard to say, there's no voice out there to say, hey, wait a second, that is the wrong direction. Now, the only voice out there that really slowed things down a little bit, oddly enough, even though we have a very conservative Supreme Court, was the Supreme Court. And even some of the conservative members who had been selected by Republican presidents went ahead and objected to, for instance, the military tribunals, basically saying the military tribunals are unconstitutional, especially when applied to American citizens. Big shock to Rumsfeld and his folks, and big shock to the president, because Congress had never approved the law. And even more so, going ahead and saying, well, we can declare anybody a combatant that we want to, when in fact they can't. And we can suspend habeas corpus for combatants when the Constitution doesn't say so, especially for American citizens. So even though the Patriot Act was passed by Congress, even though the authorization for the war, there was also the FISA, which is the Federal Intelligence Surveillance Act, says you can only do surveillance based on secret courts, and basically making it very, very easy to authorize that surveillance. And the administration didn't want to follow that. And the Supreme Court said stop. Said you didn't get Congress to change that law, which they didn't. And came back that indeed Congress had not changed the law. The administration said, well, when they authorized the war, they authorized the president to do anything. And of course that hadn't happened either. Now, in fact, there was a case where habeas corpus was suspended. A state of emergency was called. Basically, all of the systems of democracy were pulled down by the president during a national emergency, and that was during the Civil War. Habeas corpus was suspended, and they went around and they rounded up disloyal people, pro-Southerners and pro-Confederates throughout the North. However, and that was another case where both houses of Congress and the president were all in the same party. But that was Lincoln, and that was a Civil War. That was a worldwide and absolute threat to our entire existence. Not that terrorism isn't. However, if you're going to declare a state of emergency that says that we can do anything we want and that it's absolutely vital, you'd think that they would do what Lincoln also did, which was have a draft, be able to draft people into the Army to protect this country. That never happened. And in fact, taxes were not raised to cover the cost of the war, they were lowered. So we have a situation where there's no checks and balances. And I'm going to talk just for a second about one thing. In the last military procurement bill, there was a secret provision to get rid of, let's see if I can find the name of the organization. It's the Inspector General over Iraqi Reconstruction, Bowen's office, and he's the guy who found the people of the CPA with $500,000 in cash from contractors and closed down some contractors who cheated and lied. And he is being laid off. His office is being completely dismantled. And it came up during a conference, and nobody knows who put it in. My name is Reed Silverne. The name of the show is Fed Pride. The reason it's called Fed Pride is because I'm a federal employee and proud of it. Thank you.